Right now in Horry County, there is a billion-dollar industry operating completely under the radar. It pays no taxes, needs no license. In fact, police confirm the goal of this industry is to send money out of the state to drug cartels and terrorist groups around the world. In return, the business makes sure there is plenty of marijuana, cocaine, and heroin available to your kids at the most affordable prices. Perhaps the most interesting part of this business is that there is nothing law enforcement can do to stop it. Tonight, WMBF News anchor David Clue brings us the results of a 6-month investigation into the money services business and why it has made South Carolina perhaps the most criminal-friendly state in the country.
Every single day of every single week of every single year.
Knocking it out.
Local drug enforcement units plan and execute drug arrests across South Carolina.
Police, search the ground! Get on the ground!
It's a full-time job for thousands in law enforcement.
On the ground!
In fact, South Carolina has a bit of a frightening reputation when it comes to how much marijuana, cocaine, and heroin actually gets into the state. These DEU agents will tell you that South Carolina is the only state in the country where you can find every strain of heroin produced on the planet. That doesn't just happen. It happens when drug cartels find a state that welcomes their kind of business practice.
Every illicit organization or terrorist organization, criminal organization, they operate either to make money or they need money to operate.
Meet Captain Andy Lewis. He's one of the guys the Army used to track and shut down terrorist bank accounts during the Afghanistan and Iraqi wars. In 2010, Lewis offered to do the same here in South Carolina.
And so the ability to move money freely is a huge part of that. And obviously here in South Carolina, they have multiple avenues to do that.
He's been tracking illicit money being shipped out of the state through money services or money transfer businesses. You know, Western Union, MoneyGram, Vigo. But why South Carolina? We're one of only 2 states left in the country that does not regulate this industry. Every other state has an agency with the power to license, investigate, fine, and close down money service businesses. Meaning here, you can transfer thousands to anywhere in the world without a signature, ID, phone number, and you can do it all day long.
It's not just one thing. It's not narcotics. It's the ability to move money, drugs, people, weapons, anything. The infrastructure is here in South Carolina just like it is in many places. And the bad guys can move anything pretty much at will.
Captain Lewis presented a year's worth of research and tracking to our local state delegation, the state solicitors, police chiefs, sheriff's association. The numbers he uncovered were staggering. The report showed there are more than 3,000 money transfer service businesses operating in Horry and Georgetown counties alone. Fewer than 10% are registered with the state. Those businesses wired nearly $700 million a year just out of Horry County to a handful of known cartel addresses in Mexico and Colombia, and to locations operated by Hezbollah and other terrorist groups in the Middle East. Lewis's research offered one conclusion to law enforcement and lawmakers. If you want to control drug activity, human trafficking, illegal immigration, and violent crime in South Carolina, pass legislation to regulate the money transfer industry. After gaining the support of almost every law enforcement association in the state of South Carolina, as well as the solicitors' offices and key members of the House and Senate, a bill was drafted to help close that multi-billion-dollar loophole. Senate Bill 1230 was introduced into committee, and that's where it sat for 4 years. The lobby against the bill was stronger than the lawmakers pushing it.
How do we continue to be last in this front? A confluence of interest from retail outlets. Some of the big box retailers don't want to have any regulation. They don't want to have any type of a fee that perhaps in their view would be a slippery slope for more government intrusion and invading their ability to raise or to sell and make money.
Senator Rankin also admits the 62-page bill was just too long and complicated for your elected officials to even attempt to understand, much less amend and approve.
Do we not have 48 other states that we can look at and say, oh, this is how they did it, simple enough?
Well, as we do with DUI laws, as we do with child safety, as we do with gas taxes and infrastructure for our roads, there's no shame in copying a better idea. And for all too often, in this example as well, nobody's coming to South Carolina to copy what we're doing. We are the exception, not the norm.
Representative Alan Clemens championed that bill in the House as well. It, too, went nowhere.
When I see known Mexican drug cartels receiving money from Horry County in an unregulated fashion, when I see terrorist organizations like Hezbollah receiving money from Horry County, and then I look at the number and I see hundreds of millions of dollars coming from Horry County going all around the world, yeah, it concerned me, to say the least.
Yet once it died at the State House, it seemed all but forgotten.
So the big question you're probably asking, how does that money get pushed out of Horry County? The DEU says the answer lies in stores you've probably shopped in with your family. The second part of this WMBF News investigation, money laundering in South Carolina, continues next on WMBF News at 6. $700 million. It's an outrageous amount of money. The DEU says drug cartels are funneling out of the country directly through Horry County.
Anchor David Clue got an inside look at how it's possible in part 2 of our WMBF News investigation into money laundering in South Carolina.
That's him going up to that silver car. Go ahead and get him.
Back to the grind for drug enforcement agents and back to work for the drug cartels and anyone else who needed to move money from the U.S. to criminal bases worldwide.
Keep your hands where you see them.
But where are all these unregulated, unnoticed money service outlets? The answer to that question is even more shocking than the billions they ship out. Captain Lewis's report found most are located in the same delis, convenience stores, and towering souvenir shops our tourists equate with a beach vacation.
They're really not making their money selling floaties and flip-flops.
Well, that's a very good way of looking at it.
Bill Knowles runs the 15th Circuit Drug Enforcement Unit in Horry County. He worked closely with Captain Lewis during the study, and he watched how just one small cell phone shop in Myrtle Beach made its money. Not one cell phone was ever sold.
That one particular business had done over $2 million in a very short period of time, just wiring money.
Knowles says for hundreds of cartel employees here in Horry County, transferring money is a full-time job.
The same individual would go to 24, 25 different locations. He would wire anywhere between $2,500 and $2,900 to the same destination right across the border in Mexico, and he was perfectly legitimate in doing so.
So it's the fees for wiring money that's keeping these businesses alive?
No question. It wasn't that they were hiding in the middle of the night transferring money. They were doing it right in front of our face and doing it legally.
Based on Captain Lewis's research, there's a reason Myrtle Beach and other South Carolina communities are overrun with these giant souvenir shops.
When you look at those stores with millions of pieces of merchandise in there that have dust on them, and the amount of money that it costs to keep those lights on and everything, those are ready-made to just move money through because there's really no accounting. Sort of like a junkyard.
Those who have found the loopholes in our state laws aren't sitting back and waiting for someone to plug them either. These are multi-million-dollar, multinational organizations.
They understand the laws of South Carolina. They do risk mitigation like anybody else does, and then they leverage those weaknesses we have in resources and laws and business processes and in oversight.
And Bill Knowles knows that every day South Carolina chooses to allow millions to leave the state in support of drugs, weapons, terrorists, and illegal immigration, the threat to your family grows.
Appears to be heroin.
So too does the threat to the men and women charged with stemming the flow of drugs.
The facts are that ill-gotten gains are being wired from this state on a daily basis and we're doing nothing to stop it.
Perhaps a ray of hope from the State House to the Criminal Justice Center in Conway. Our investigation appears to have at least gotten those with the power to do something talking again.
I would tell you that the conversation has been restarted.
Restarted why? Because of our inquiries?
Well, I think your inquiry as well as the local law enforcement.
What are we doing about it? What are you as a state legislator doing about making this conversation start over again?
With your help and your reminder, I have reinitiated that discussion with law enforcement. So it's time to move the process forward, I think. South Carolina doesn't need to be the last stronghold of drug dealers and money launderers.
We're hoping now with what you're doing and with it coming back to light, it will speed the process up. And when I say speed it up, it's bring it back to life, basically, is what I'm saying.
Since we first began our investigation into money laundering here in South Carolina, both Senator Rankin and Representative Clemens have contacted law enforcement in the state as well as their colleagues to try and bring up yet another bill to debate this issue. But given the history of this issue and this legislature, it will likely be up to the voters to decide when it's time to stop funneling money to terrorists and drug cartels overseas. In Columbia, I'm David Clue, WMBF News.
The National Guard also recognized the danger South Carolina was facing because of its lack of regulation of the money services industry. It proposed a $50 million pilot program to research the impacts of money laundering and help educate lawmakers about the best ways to stop it. A delegation of lawmakers, local military, and law enforcement went to Senator Lindsey Graham's office in Washington back in 2012 to get his support, providing him with all the information you just saw and heard. They never heard back from his office. That pilot program went to another state. We contacted the senator's staff 2 weeks ago. We're still waiting for their response.